When you think of prehistoric ocean predators, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Let me guess. Megalodon, right? The giant shark with teeth the size of your hand and a bite that could crush a car. The poster child of ancient oceanic terror. The creature that launched 1,000 terrible sci-fi movies and an entire industry of dubious documentaries claiming it's still alive somewhere out there. And look, I get it. Megalodon is cool. It was massive, reaching lengths of up to 14 to 15 meters or about 45 to 50 feet. Though some extreme estimates push it to 18 meters. It weighed somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 tons, possibly more depending on how chunky it was feeling. Its teeth were serrated daggers up to 18 centimeters or 7 inches long. And its bite force? Estimates put it at around 180,000 newtons, or roughly 40,000 pounds of force. That's about 10 times stronger than a great white shark, and roughly 2.5 times stronger than a T-Rex. So yeah, Megalodon earned its reputation as the ultimate predator of the ancient seas. But here's the thing that nobody talks about. Megalodon wasn't alone at the top. In fact, for millions of years, it had to share the throne with something that was, in many ways, even more terrifying. Something with bigger teeth. Something smarter. Something that didn't just eat fish and seals and the occasional unfortunate whale. No, this thing actively hunted other whales for breakfast. And occasionally, just for fun, it probably snacked on sharks too, including possibly Megalodon itself. This creature was called Leviathan melvillei, and yes, it's named after Herman Melville, the guy who wrote Moby Dick, because when scientists discovered this animal's skull in the deserts of Peru, their first thought was apparently, holy crap, this is literally a monster from a novel, except it's real and it's terrifying. Leviathan wasn't a shark, it was a whale. Specifically, a sperm whale, but not the kind you see today, the ones that dive deep and eat squid and mind their own business. No, Leviathan was what happened when evolution looked at sperm whales and said, what if we made one of these an apex predator? What if we gave it the biggest teeth in the animal kingdom and a taste for warm-blooded prey? The result was a creature that redefined what it meant to be a marine predator. And here's where the story gets wild. Because this wasn't just some prehistoric curiosity. This was a thinking, hunting, possibly pack-coordinating monster that might have looked at Megalodon and seen not a threat, but a potential meal. Leviathan melvillei lived during the Miocene epoch, roughly 9 to 12 million years ago. Back then, the oceans were a very different place. Warmer, shallower in some areas, and absolutely teeming with life. We're talking about massive schools of fish, enormous populations of seals and sea lions, and most importantly, whales. Lots and lots of whales. Baleen whales that filtered plankton, smaller toothed whales that hunted fish. And then, sitting at the very top of the food chain, you had Leviathan. The first fossils of this creature were discovered in 2008 in the Pisco Formation of Peru, which, fun fact, used to be underwater. Today, it's a desert, but millions of years ago, it was a rich marine environment. And when paleontologists unearthed the skull of Leviathan, they knew immediately they'd found something special. Because this wasn't just any whale skull, this was a skull built for violence. The skull alone measured about 3 meters or nearly 10 feet long. For context, that's about the same length as a full-grown great white shark, just the head. And inside that massive skull was a jaw packed with the largest functional teeth ever discovered in any animal, living or extinct. The exposed crowns of these teeth measured up to 36 centimeters or 14 inches long. And that's just what we can see. Based on the tooth sockets and anatomy, the total length including the roots could have exceeded 40 centimeters or about 16 inches, though we haven't found a complete tooth that long yet. To put that in perspective, Megalodon's teeth, which everyone loses their minds over, topped out at around 18 centimeters or 7 inches. Leviathan's teeth were literally twice as long, and unlike Megalodon's teeth, which were thin and blade-like, designed for slicing, Leviathan's teeth were thick, conical, and built like ivory spears. These weren't cutting tools, these were stabbing weapons, puncturing weapons, teeth designed to grab onto something enormous and not let go. So before we dive deeper into what happens when you give a whale the biggest teeth in history and point it at other whales, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Because if evolution can turn a peaceful ocean mammal into a whale-murdering nightmare, the least you can do is click a button. Also, drop a like. It scientifically proves you have excellent taste in prehistoric monsters. Now, here's what makes Leviathan even more terrifying. It had these massive teeth on both its upper and lower jaws. Most modern sperm whales only have functional teeth on the lower jaw. The upper jaw has small, vestigial teeth that don't even erupt through the gums. But But Leviathan? Fully functional weapons on top and bottom, interlocking. When this thing closed its mouth, it was basically deploying a bear trap made of foot-long knives. Based on the skull and some comparative anatomy with modern sperm whales, scientists estimate that Leviathan measured somewhere between 13.5 and 17.5 meters long, or about 44 to 57 feet. That puts it roughly in the same size range as a modern adult male sperm whale, though some estimates push it even larger, and it probably weighed somewhere between 40 and 60 tons. So, comparable to Megalodon in terms of size and weight, but very, very different in terms of capabilities. Because here's the thing about Megalodon. For all its size and power, it was still fundamentally a shark. And sharks have some built-in limitations. Their skeletons are made of cartilage, which is lighter than bone, but also less rigid. They're cold-blooded, which means their metabolism is slower. And while they're incredibly effective predators, they're also kind of simple. Point, bite, eat. That's pretty much the strategy. Leviathan, on the other hand, was a mammal. Warm-blooded, with a massive brain. Modern sperm whales have the largest brain of any animal on Earth, weighing up to 9 kilograms or about 20 pounds. And Leviathan's brain was probably comparable in size, if not larger relative to its body. This thing was smart, like problem-solving, strategic hunting, possibly working in groups kind of smart. And that intelligence, combined with its physical attributes, made it an absolutely devastating predator. Because Leviathan wasn't just built to kill. It was built to kill whales. Specifically baleen whales, the giant filter feeders that cruise through the oceans, straining plankton and small fish through their baleen plates. These whales could be enormous, some reaching lengths of 20 meters or more and weighing 40 to 50 tons. They were the megafauna of their time, slow, ponderous, and packed with blubber and meat. And Leviathan looked at them the way a lion looks at a water buffalo. Dinner. We know this because of those teeth. The size, the shape, the robustness, everything about them screams, designed for tackling large prey. You don't evolve 40-centimeter teeth for eating fish. You evolve them for grabbing onto something massive that's trying to get away, for holding on while your prey thrashes and struggles, for delivering crushing, puncturing bites that cause catastrophic damage. Modern orcas, which are much smaller than Leviathan, already hunt baleen whales using coordinated pack tactics. They work together to tire out their prey, targeting calves or weaker individuals, and then deliver killing bites to vital areas. Now imagine that strategy, but deployed by a creature twice the size of an orca, with teeth 4 times as long, and a bite force that could rival or exceed Megalodon's. Because yes, let's talk about that bite force. While we don't have exact measurements, obviously because Leviathan is extinct, we can make educated estimates based on its skull structure, jaw muscles, and comparisons to modern animals. And those estimates are frankly horrifying. Some researchers suggest that Leviathan's bite force could have been in the range of 160,000 to 200,000 newtons. That's comparable to, or possibly even stronger than, Megalodon. To put that in perspective, that's enough force to bite through the hull of a small boat. Not that they had boats back then, but you get the idea. And here's where it gets interesting. Because while Megalodon had the bigger body and probably the stronger bite in absolute terms, Leviathan had a major advantage. Precision. Sharks bite with their whole body. They lunge forward, jaws open, and slam into their prey with all their momentum. It's effective, but it's not exactly surgical. Leviathan, on the other hand, had a flexible neck. Its eyes were positioned differently than modern sperm whales, probably giving it better forward vision for tracking prey, though not true binocular vision like land predators have. And it almost certainly had echolocation, the ability to use sound to map its environment and track prey even in murky water or complete darkness, just like modern sperm whales do. We can't prove the soft tissue structures existed, but it's a very safe bet, and it had intelligence, all of which meant that when Leviathan attacked, it knew exactly what it was doing. It could target specific body parts, aim for vital organs, adjust its strategy mid-hunt. It wasn't just a killing machine. It was a thinking killing machine. So, what did Leviathan eat? Well, based on everything we know, the answer is pretty much anything it wanted. But its primary prey was almost certainly medium to large-sized baleen whales. We're talking about animals that were 10 to 20 meters long and weighed tens of tons. Leviathan would have used its speed, which was probably considerable given its streamlined body and powerful tail, to chase down its prey. Then, once it got close, it would deploy those nightmare teeth, grabbing onto the whale's body and holding on while delivering devastating bites. Some researchers think Leviathan might have targeted the flippers or tail flukes first, immobilizing its prey before going for the killing blow. Others think it might have gone straight for the head or abdomen, trying to cause massive trauma and blood loss as quickly as possible. Either way, once Leviathan got its teeth into you, you were done. There was no escape. But here's the question that everyone asks. Did Leviathan and Megalodon ever fight each other? And if so, who won? The short answer is we don't know for sure. But the evidence suggests that yes, they absolutely shared the same oceans at the same time. Leviathan fossils and Megalodon teeth have been found in the same geological formations, dated to overlapping time periods. Which means these two apex predators were definitely aware of each other. And in the ocean, when two apex predators meet, things tend to get interesting. Now, direct evidence of a fight between these two would be incredibly rare. We'd need to find bite marks on bones that could be definitively attributed to one species or the other, and so far, we haven't found that smoking gun. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Fossilization is rare. Preservation of injuries is even rarer. The absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, especially when we're talking about events that happened millions of years ago. But we can make some educated guesses about what would happen if Leviathan and Megalodon went head-to-head. And honestly, the outcome probably depended on who attacked first. Megalodon had the size advantage in most cases, being generally a bit larger and heavier. It also had a bite that could sever limbs and cause catastrophic damage. One good bite from Megalodon could potentially take off a flipper or a tail fluke, crippling Leviathan and turning the fight in its favor. If Megalodon got that first devastating strike, the fight might have been over quickly. But Leviathan had intelligence, precision, and possibly the advantage of warm-blooded endurance. Sharks are ambush predators. They rely on that first strike, that initial burst of speed and power. But if the fight dragged on, Leviathan's mammalian metabolism might have given it more stamina. It could have outlasted Megalodon in a prolonged struggle. There's also the question of how they attacked. Megalodon would go for the body, trying to deliver a massive bite to the torso or tail. Leviathan, being smarter and more strategic, might have tried to avoid a direct confrontation and instead use hit-and-run tactics. Or, alternatively, Leviathan might have gone for Megalodon's gills, trying to suffocate the shark. Modern orcas do this with great whites. They flip them upside down, inducing tonic immobility, and then hold them there until they drown. Leviathan could potentially have done something similar with Megalodon. And here's the thing that often gets overlooked. If Leviathan lived in pods like modern sperm whales, it might have hunted in groups. Modern sperm whales are social animals. They live in pods, communicate with complex vocalizations, and sometimes coordinate their hunting efforts. If Leviathan had similar social structures, which is entirely possible, then Megalodon wouldn't have been facing one opponent. It would have been facing a coordinated pack of them. And at that point, even the largest Megalodon wouldn't have stood a chance. Imagine it. You're a Megalodon, cruising through the warm Miocene seas looking for a meal. Maybe you spot a group of baleen whales in the distance. Easy targets, you think? Slow, defenseless, basically swimming buffets. So you move in, confident in your position as the ocean's top predator, and then you hear it. A series of clicks, echolocation, getting louder, getting closer. You turn, and there they are. 3, maybe 4 Leviathan, moving in formation, their massive teeth gleaming even in the murky water. They've been tracking you, and now they're not running, they're attacking. One comes from the side, going for your pectoral fin. Another dives deep, aiming for your belly. A third circles around, trying to get behind you. And you, for all your size and power, suddenly realize that you're not the hunter anymore. You're the prey. That scenario might sound like something out of a monster movie, but it's entirely plausible based on what we know about Leviathan's capabilities and the hunting strategies of modern toothed whales. And if it did happen, if Leviathan pods actively hunted Megalodon, then that fundamentally changes our understanding of the ancient ocean food chain. Because it means that Megalodon, for all its fame, for all its reputation as the ultimate predator, had to look over its shoulder, metaphorically speaking. It had to be careful. It had to avoid certain areas, certain pods of whales that were too dangerous to mess with. It wasn't invincible. It had a rival, an equal, and possibly a superior. Now, despite all of this, both Leviathan and Megalodon eventually went extinct. Megalodon disappeared around 3.6 million years ago. Leviathan vanished earlier, roughly 9 to 7 million years ago, though the fossil record for large marine mammals is patchy, so the exact timing is unclear. And the reasons for their extinctions were probably similar: climate change, shifting ocean currents, changes in prey availability. The oceans cooled, baleen whale populations declined or migrated to different areas, and the apex predators that depended on them struggled to adapt. But here's what's fascinating. While Leviathan's lineage ended, other sperm whales survived and eventually gave rise to the species we see today. Modern sperm whales are still around, still thriving, still diving to incredible depths to hunt giant squid. They lost the massive teeth and the taste for whale meat, but they kept the intelligence, the social structures, the echolocation. They adapted. They survived. Megalodon, on the other hand, left no descendants. Great white sharks are often thought to be related, but they're actually from a different lineage. Megalodon's family line ended, and maybe that tells us something about the difference between being a specialized killing machine and being an intelligent, adaptable predator. Because at the end of the day, Leviathan was more than just a monster that ate sharks. It was a thinking, feeling, socially complex animal that happened to also be one of the most effective predators the ocean has ever seen. It had family bonds. It communicated. It might have even had culture, passed down hunting techniques from one generation to the next. And that to me is what makes Leviathan truly terrifying. Not the teeth, though those are nightmare fuel. Not the size, though, that's impressive. But the intelligence, the awareness, the fact that this creature understood what it was doing. It wasn't mindlessly attacking, it was hunting with purpose, with strategy, with intention. Megalodon was a force of nature. Powerful, relentless, unstoppable. But Leviathan was something else. It was a monster with a mind. And in the ancient oceans, that made all the difference. So the next time someone brings up Megalodon and talks about how it was the ultimate ocean predator, remind them that for millions of years it shared the seas with something that had bigger teeth, a bigger brain, and absolutely no fear. A whale that hunted other whales. A creature that looked at the biggest shark in history and saw not a threat, but a potential meal. Leviathan melvillei, the monster that ate sharks. The predator that made Megalodon nervous. The whale that redefined what it meant to be an apex hunter. Because the ocean doesn't just breed monsters, it breeds rivals. Thanks for hanging out with me, and until next time on Dead Curious.